Scott Horton, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Nah, thanks for joining me, man. It's a little bit surreal for me. I've been in the libertarian space for decades, sort of lurking in the background, having a real job and just consuming things for a while. I've only been doing this for about 2 years, and there's just certain people, like I get a Bob Murphy on here, it's Zuby. There's certain people I've had in the show that I'm just pretty geeked out about, and you're certainly up at the top of the list, man. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, taking the time from you. You're definitely one of those people I have in the hero bucket, man. So I know you're not supposed to have heroes, but I love what you're doing. Followed what you've been doing, Justin Raimondo, the whole anti-war thing for a very long time. I think you're doing awesome work. So just super,
Thanks, man.
super stoked to have you, man. And what a great time too. I don't think people understand what's going on in Venezuela. I think there's been the United States, information consumer is very tied into what's going on in the Middle East. We got so much time and energy and blood and treasure tied up in the Middle East. I don't think people know what's going on with Venezuela. Can you give us a TLDR, help us understand what you think's going on with respect to Venezuela?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start with I don't really understand, or I don't claim to be the world's greatest expert on what all is motivating this thing. But yeah, let's start with this has nothing to do with fentanyl. It has nothing to do with cocaine. It has nothing to do with the Cartel of the Suns, which was, such as it ever existed, was a CIA front back, in the 1980s. And has nothing to do with this guy. And just as Trump was giving his big press conference about it, accusing him of all this stuff, the Justice Department was issuing an updated indictment that dropped 30 of the 32 references to this cartel and any reference to Maduro being the head of the thing. So that's the government themselves dropping their pretext for their intervention just right off the bat there. It's pretty amazing to see. So, and I think anybody could have told you, they brought up fentanyl, but they had to drop that because the government itself says that's not where any of it comes from. The chemicals come from China and then they're processed in Mexico and Venezuela. Even if they're selling cocaine, they're mostly selling it to other people in the Caribbean, not in the United States of America. And at least according to Grok, claiming to cite government statistics from the CDC and et cetera, there are fewer than 2,000 deaths, more like 1,500 cocaine overdoses per year, where it's not that they're also taking other drugs, and overdosing actually from the other drugs, not from the cocaine or from the mix of the two. So, and who does cocaine other than a bunch of rich Republicans who, who can afford it and who use it to what? To what? Stay up late and drink longer and maybe get laid. That's what it's for. And to call that a national security threat or a pretext for war is just silly and meant to be, maybe, like they're mocking us. And then there's the oil. Well, Venezuela nationalized their oil 50 years ago, 1976. Now, I'm getting a bit of echo now. I wasn't before, but I'm getting one now. I want to make sure as we go forward here.
I've already started, so I can't change my echo can. So apologies for that. I'm gonna turn down my volume a little bit.
Yeah, just turn your speakers down a bit. I'll turn mine down too, just in case.
All right, cool. Is this any better?
Yeah, I think so. Well, let me rant and rave it more. Check. Yeah, that's okay. So, yeah, they nationalized their oil back 50 years ago, and there's been settlements and so forth. And no, the deal is not that if any American company makes an investment in some other country and then they lose that investment, that the United States of America has a mandate then to go to war, invade that country, or kidnap its president, or even put sanctions on them, threaten them in any way over that. That's the difference between being inside the continental United States of America or not. That's where their jurisdiction ends. And you can see how that's completely crazy. They could write themselves endless checks for endless intervention anywhere in the world just because a business has an investment. An American business has an investment somewhere and lost it. That's completely nuts to say. And every company should know that. Those are the risks you take when you're dealing with some third world country where a revolution could break out or you don't know what'll happen, especially if you're supporting the very fewest people possible in power so you can keep most of the money. And that's what's going to lead to the revolution, So, anyways, so it's not that American companies are still holding this grudge, or the United States of America somehow all this time has been holding this grudge that when they settled for less than the total or whatever over these years. And there was another period of adjustment, I guess in the 1990s or in the W. Bush years. I'm sorry, I think in the W. Bush years where they had brought these lawsuits and all of this. So any American investments there are whole enough. And as a pretext for war, it's completely ridiculous to say they stole our oil. I mean, this is just beyond retarded. Think of it this way. What if Barack Obama said that instead of the president that you kind of like? What if that was Bill Clinton talking? Oh, they stole our oil. You would say, shut up, right? That's completely crazy and stupid. Get the hell out of here with that. So, but then, you know, Chevron has had a very good relationship with them this whole time. And although Exxon has not, I don't think it's really right that Exxon's really behind the push for war. I've not seen any real evidence of that. They support think tanks that are very hawkish on the issue. You know, I don't know. I saw the Students for Liberty that are sort of a Koch brothers front, or Koch brother now, Charles Koch front, hawking it up. But then again, the Cato Institute has been fantastic on this. You know, their leaders, Justin Logan, you know, whatever, him and Doug Bondo. I haven't seen what he wrote about Venezuela, but I know he's good on it. And then Brandon Buck and John Hoffman, like all the guys at Cato now, their foreign policy team, they're great on this stuff. And without question. So, you know, Koch money aside, that has clearly not influenced Justin Logan. Read his article in the American Conservative today. He is clearly not being, you know, overly concerned about where Cato's next Koch Foundation check is going to come from or whatever like that when he's doing this work. So, and I don't know what Charles Koch's opinion about this is, but I would think it's probably pretty bad because they control, actually, I don't know. They control the refinery in Corpus, but that may be the one where Exxon does all their, or pardon me, where Chevron's doing their refining. And so they're already good. I need to look into that more. This is not my specialty for sure.
Yeah, it's complicated too. You got Coke money on one side and Coke money on the other side. So
yeah, exactly.
it's hard to suss out.
No, it depends which way you spell it. It's one of them homonyms.
Well, I'm just shocked that you're telling me that Donald Trump might not be shooting the American people straight. Like that to me shocks me to my core. Like I need to.
Yeah, you got to wonder what he even knows. You know what I mean? I don't know. Or what people are telling him. But look, I think what it really comes down to, and there's a clip, you can find this, boy, you'd have to page down a lot now, but it's on my Twitter feed. I need to memorize this lady's name. I'll tell you what you do. If you want to search this video, here's what you could do. You could search my name. Scott Horton Show is my name on Twitter. And then Venezuela. And then take it away. Because a guy tagged me in it. And that was what he said. Take it away, lady, general lady, whatever her name is. And then it's a 1 minute long clip of an American Army general talking about why we got to take over Venezuela. And it's all about the minerals. Do you have that clip there? Can you play it on here?
I don't have the, by the way, I don't have the expertise. I just have conversations with people. I'm not a multimedia expert. I need to get better.
Yeah, I don't know. Especially I don't know how to do that on somebody else's show. I guess I could pipe in the audio here. I could pipe in the audio. You want to hear it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's hear it, dude. So I bet I can find it real easy. So here's my name. And then here's Venezuela. And then is take it. Oh, come on. It came up yesterday. Here it is. Okay. So the lady's name is Laura J. Richardson, and she is a U.S. Army general, 4-star.
Of course, the countries, Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua with Russia relationships. Why this region matters with all of its rich resources and rare earth elements. You've got the lithium triangle, which is needed for technology today. 60% of the world's lithium is in the lithium triangle, Argentina, Bolivia, Chile. You just have the largest oil reserves, light sweet crude discovered off of Guyana over a year ago. You have Venezuela's resources as well with oil, copper, gold. We have the Amazon, lungs of the world. You have the 31% of the world's fresh water in this region too. I mean, it's just off the charts. We have a lot to do. This region matters. It has a lot to do with national security. and we need to step up our game.
So a couple of edits in that, but pretty much you got it there. That why is this our business? Well, they got things that we want. And all this crap about, globalized trade and free markets. No, we didn't mean that. This is just naked imperialism. This is the British East India Company. We're going to go in there. We're going to take what you got and we'll pay you whatever we feel like paying. And that's, Trump's big PR stunt after the war is to promise they're going to give us billions of dollars worth of oil for free. Give us the oil. And so, boy, W. Bush didn't try that in Iraq. Kind of did, but didn't work.
This is such a naked play, though. This is the weird thing about it, is that it seems like he and his administration are just saying, fuck you, we're going to do this, and what are you going to do about it? And then they're moving on. They're talking about Greenland now. They're saying military action isn't off the table for Greenland. They're talking about Cuba. There's an entire thing.
Talking about assassinating the Ayatollah. You get the idea that Rubio was telling him, honestly, Mr. President, we could just kill everybody who needs killing in a few weeks and then just call it a day, dude. You want to install a base in Greenland and plant your flag? No one's going to stop you. In Cuba, they've made it clear, and I think this is part of their Venezuela policy, is separating Venezuela from Cuba so that they're not there to subsidize their commie economy anymore, and then hoping that the regime will fall there. I think Rubio said, if I was in Cuba or in Colombia, where left-wingers are now in power, I'd be very concerned that I might be next. And, the thing is about it, there's a real parallel here with the 1989 war in Panama, where it took a little bit longer to get Noriega and all that, and a lot more people were killed. But in the scheme of things, it was quick and easy to the empire. And they learned the lesson that, the Soviet Union isn't even going to say anything, much less do anything about it. And they were on their way out of even existing anymore by that point. And so now there's only one superpower in the world, and it's us. And so not only is our power supreme relative to every other nation in the world, but also it's supreme compared to any circumstance in the world. If we want to invade a country and topple it and arrest their leader and haul them back to Miami for trial or whatever we want to do, our guys can do that. And so this was, led immediately to Iraq War I, where, hey, we did it in Panama, we can do it in Iraq. It'll be simple and easy. Now, as you know, living in the future here, we've been bombing Iraq for 35 years now. Ever since then, what's the date? Right around this time, almost another week from now, right around this time, 1991. And we've been bombing them ever since with hardly a break the whole time. Although at a much less, a slower tempo now, because we're just killing some Iraqis in partnership with the government rather than fighting against the government there. So, but they're still going out on raids and killing people there from time to time. So that was part of the thinking, though. You might remember, well, you're not nearly as old as me, but I remember there was an old Simpsons where Bart and Lisa go to the military academy. And when they graduate, the general at the graduation ceremony says, in the future, all our wars will be fought by robots on the top of very tall mountains. And your duty is clear to build and maintain those robots. Because that was like their idea was, and it was the common conception that they were parodying, was this is now the American idea of war. And that may have come, I'm not sure if that came right before or right after the war in Kosovo, where they completely failed on their own terms, right? And it's in the book. But what they did was lose very few guys in an air war without any invasion, and then a claimed negotiated victory at the end, which really it was the Americans that backed down rather than the Serbs. But they called it a win, and Wesley Clark flew those jets at 60,000 feet or whatever it was and tried to make sure nobody got shot down. They did lose a few jets, very few. But they were bombing from so high in the air that they were bombing cardboard tanks down there and then just dumping bombs at the dump your bombs site because they couldn't find any targets from that altitude. They had no idea who they were even killing down there. And but anyway, there's that kind of there's a very real risk now, as Ben Shapiro said in a recent thing I saw on Twitter, which I admit I didn't actually hit play. I just saw the caption. But he was saying, we've beaten Iraq syndrome, right? This is what Bush Sr. said about Iraq War I was, by God, we've beaten the Vietnam syndrome. We've kicked the Vietnam syndrome, he said. And this was Americans' reluctance to go to war. And here Ben Shapiro, the self-appointed leader of the American conservative movement, is saying that this raid in Venezuela, now we've finally beaten Iraq syndrome and everyone's reluctance to do things like this, because see how quick and fun and easy it can be. And which, by the way, as in the scheme of things, it's almost like they would argue in the Obama years. I remember Bill Maher got in a big argument with Jeremy Scahill about Barack Obama's drone wars. And Scahill is going, they're killing people, man, it's horrible. They're blowing up weddings and all this stuff, and they're creating more terrorists. And Bill Maher's like, yeah, but like a drone strike compared to George W. Bush sending the entire Marine Corps and 3rd Infantry Division into Iraq? I mean, it's not that bad. And Scahill's like, yeah, but that's not just the measure of like anything less worse than Iraq War II is okay. It's not, it's horrible, right? But to Bill Maher, of course, you know, but to this center left that Bill Maher represents, same thing here, right? Yeah, okay, maybe Iraq was bad, but you're really going to argue about sending the Delta Force in to not lose a single man to score like the hugest touchdown and then turn around and walk away, no problem, fly away, and there's Chinooks high-fiving? You're going to, and then, oh, I was going to say, I'm sorry, I'm off on the fucking, I spaced out. What I meant to say was that, that they're, well, first of all, they're now inspired how easy this was. But also that they have, in fact, narrowed their goals, right? So this is not a regime change. It's just a president change. And Trump immediately came out and threw the right wing under the bus and said, I don't even think he named the guy that supposedly won the last election. He may very well have. But he named the Nobel Prize winning lady Machado and said, she does not have the respect of the people. She cannot rule. There is no natural source of power. And in other words, I'm not sending in the Marines and the Army to completely disband their military and debothify their government and create an entire new government to support her. We're not doing that. So what does that mean then? It means welcome back still to the warmth of collectivism. We're now taking the second commie in line, and she's going to be in power, but she better do it, we say, turn over the minerals, cut out the Chinese and the Russians and whatever. So, and now she's being conciliatory, and there are rumors, there are reports, I guess, based on single sources, no, hard proof, but there are stories that make sense that she had already cut a deal, that Rubio or the CIA or whoever had come to her and said, listen, lady, you and these factions stand out of the way. We're coming. And so don't get yourself killed that night. And, you might have a place here or whatever. I don't know. I haven't read reports. I've only heard of them. So there may very well be solid reporting about this. I just am not aware of it yet. But I am not claiming to be up on all of this stuff. But so anyway, then the thing is about this, right, is if you ask the Hawks, why do you need a regime change there? It's because it's a completely criminal, corrupt, commie, gangster government, right? Well, just kidnapping the president doesn't change that. So it's the same reason that just decapitating Saddam Hussein wasn't good enough. They needed a full regime change. Mr. President, we got to debothify the whole government and abolish the army and build a new one and all of these things. Because from the Hawks' point of view, in for a penny, in for a pound. If you're going to do this, you got to do it right and all that. What did Obama say? Obama said, oh, Libya was a shit show. Why? Because he did a regime change, but then he didn't stay. That was what he said.
Yeah, I remember that.
Have stayed and put the troops there and taken responsibility for the future of the place. They were like experimenting. Iraq was too heavy a touch. They said this stuff. Iraq was too heavy a touch. Libya was too light a touch. Now we're going maybe too light and supporting Al-Qaeda in Syria when we need a more hands-on role. Like, this is the way these idiots talk about this stuff. So, but now, let's say, hypothetically, that like 1 month from now, we have a very compliant new commie vice president turned president there, and she's doing whatever she can to accommodate the Americans. Well, how far are their demands going to go? Because she's still sitting on top of a completely corrupt gangster commie government, according to them. And you know them. They're way worse gangsters than any Venezuelan commies. What they want is to do a full austerity regime, abolish all, social programs for poor people, so-called nationalized or, as a step, take over all resources and then hand them over to them, not just oil, but everything else, and pay them nothing. It's the same old American economic hitman kind of thing. G. Edward Griffin described this in his book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, back in the 1990s. This is what they do.
Great
they
book.
Get you in debt. It's a huge part of so many of these stories, a huge part of the story of Ukraine, right? The big, austerity program. So the Americans can't do their whole, cookie cutter program, their template for regime change here without, a total fight breaking out over who controls the power there. And I am not a demographer or a real expert on this. I didn't go to college or whatever, but I do know a little bit about how I've been told by people who know that there is a real kind of rich-poor divide there. And a big part of that is those who are truly descended from European Spaniards and those who are mostly just the Indians. In the United States, they killed almost all the Indians, or, I guess enough of them died of disease and were driven off into camps where you live your whole life in the United States and never see any Indians. Down there, that's not true, right? They're still there. And that's the left, is the poor peasants. And the right is the rich Spaniard types, that's oversimplification, but that has a lot to do with it. And in both cases, it's always socialism. It's just the question is whether it's socialism only for the rich or whether it's socialism for the poor people too, or maybe only for the poor people, but not for the people who used to be rich. And so that was what Hugo Chavez did. He was not I think he was more commie than the people came before him, because he did, ruin their agriculture and all their different, they did have a very diverse economy before the commies came there. But what pissed off the Americans was that he was, taking money from their friends, or at least stopping giving money to their friends and their favored companies. And he was giving money to the poor. And of course, it was George W. Bush that made all this possible, the same way that he saved Vladimir Putin's Russia by invading Iraq and tripling the price of a barrel of oil from, whatever it was, but a gallon, it was at the pump, it went from $1 to $3. So I forgot what that was. I think it went up to, I think at the time it was like it went from $20 to $50 a barrel or something like that. And so this is how Putin was able to say, I am Putin the Great. I saved Russia. Aren't you glad I was here when he was just riding on Bush? You didn't build that. That was W. Bush paying your way by killing all those Iraqis and destabilizing Middle Eastern oil supplies. You know what I mean? Anyways, so same thing in Venezuela. This is how Hugo Chavez was able to get away with, providing this massive social welfare state and being able to support it. Of course, then at the same time, he's implementing commie controls over business that ended up really, gutting and undermining business and destroying the economy there. And then, but you know what? And right-wingers and libertarians should be the first to point out, too, that it was the sanctions regime, too. It wasn't just communism. Because you know what? Look at Alaska. Alaska's a communist state where the government owns all the oil and they give all the people a dividend check and all of that. And they're not bankrupt, and they're not all in concentration camps. The kulaks don't have to all be liquidated in order to provide to feed the people in the factories and whatever the thing. You know what I mean? They just do it that way. Why? Because oil comes free out of the ground almost, and then you can sell it for a lot of money. And they got huge supplies of it. So you could have a commie state of Alaska or a commie state of Venezuela, and hey, they're resource exporters, assuming that they can make a contract with a capitalist company somewhere to actually run the equipment for them, which they're going to need that. But you can hire the French to come in and run a dang oil pump. You know what I mean? That's old tech, man. That's no problem. So even with this heavy crude and whatever, that's not the hold up there. So anyway,
Real quick, I want to ask a question.
well, just to wrap that, my rambling weird thought there in one sentence is to say that, so I don't think that they know what they're going to do or how they're going to do it. They sort of painted themselves into a situation here where they're not going to be happy with the new guys, or if they are, then their own regime isn't going to be happy with them. And either way, it's going to be an untenable situation.
Got it. And I don't disagree with that. My thought is that, and this is tied into my question, I don't think they care. I think Venezuela is not the main show. This is a sideshow. I think that, tell me what you think about this. I think that Venezuela is an assurance that oil keeps flowing while they attack Iran on behalf of Israel. I think that's next. I think that's what they're priming for, because Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz. They can disrupt Middle Eastern oil supplies, and if they can kill two birds with one stone by impacting the oil that was destined for China, for example. There's that whole destabilization thing where they can divert that oil to the United States, make sure it keeps flowing, also impact an adversary, and then tee up a bomb for Iran. I think Iran's coming next. I think it's and they don't care about Venezuela.
My only reservation there is that I don't think it's going to be that easy to get all this Venezuelan oil pumping and to market, refined and useful for sale in a short amount of time here. Now, that doesn't mean that they aren't under some illusions about that.
Well, hold on a second. Tell me what you think about this, because you mentioned the light sweet crude in Guyana. Like that is a massive deposit right there. And slant drilling is a thing. And that Guyana and Venezuela have already had beef already. I wonder, with the U.S. backing, if they just take that too.
There's also a thing where it could be really that their plan here is to redline the oil, to stop it from being pumped, to raise the price. And, that was a big part of the argument about Iraq, was the neoconservatives wanted to privatize all the oil in small parcels to as many companies as possible to ramp up production and to break OPEC. Now, the neocons have gotten along with Saudi a lot better since then, but back then that was their plan. And James Baker came from Houston, the lawyer for Exxon, former Secretary of the Treasury and State, and he came and said, yeah, no, we're not doing that. We're going to have a national Iraqi oil company, and they're going to obey the quota set by the Saudis in OPEC. And that would be limiting, redlining mostly Kurdish oil. That was the plan then. And I don't know the state of Iraqi oil production today, but then again, America lost that war by fighting it for people that they hate and hate them. So I don't know that America's really in charge of Shia Iraq's, oil pumping policy at this point. But I think that did have a lot to do with why they invaded in the first place. And it's funny because, man, I'm sorry, I'm going to flub the details here. I wish I remembered the details a little bit better. But when they did the coup against Hugo Chavez in 2002, Greg Palast from the BBC reported that the reason they did that is because the NSA had intercepted recording or whatever, communication between Iraq and Libya saying, let's spike the price of gas. And they were saying, no, we better take control of Venezuela. We can't go to Iraq for another few months. I guess it was going to be another 6 months or 8 months by then. So if Saddam and Gaddafi are going to spike the price, we better take control of Venezuela so that we can compensate for that. So that was part of their thinking then. I hope I'm not screwing those details up, but I'm pretty sure that was what Greg had said about that. So, but look, it does make sense that, I guess you kind of have to speculate, right? That Rubio has convinced Trump, we can do Venezuela, we can do Cuba, we can do Colombia, we can do Iran. Can't do North Korea because they got atom bombs. But otherwise, why must America suffer these regimes that we don't like when we can just kill them? When we can just kidnap them? I'm sure Delta Force right now and Navy SEALs are telling Trump, hey, we can kidnap people too. We can do night raids. these boys have had a lot of practice doing night raids. They know how to do a night raid, all right. So, like, what the hell? I don't know, man. It goes back to, you know, Trump and his character overall, who he is and what he's about and all that. He never was Thomas Jefferson. Never was Ron Paul. He's Andrew Jackson, dude. He's God, or worse, he's Rudy Giuliani. You listen to Trump talk about making America great. He's not talking about making America free. He's talking about having strong imperial leadership to make America strong in a way where, like, his hero, President McKinley, who started a war with Spain and stole Cuba and the Philippines. And Trump's like, the great President McKinley, and renamed Mount Homo or whatever they had changed it to, renamed it back to Mount McKinley again. And right, so like for him, he'd be crazy not to take Greenland, man. That's what'll make him a great president in the history books forever, dude. He went and did this giant thing. And hell, I got the map in front of me. You know how it is. They make Greenland look huge. So like to him, why make a deal with the Dutch when you could just take it? Or at least pressure them into giving in and give that dang territory up. So I think that's, you know, that's what we're getting. You voted for Rudy Giuliani, you got Rudy Giuliani. You know, there are a lot of people who try to project Ron Paul onto Donald Trump. Donald Trump would like pay respect to Ron Paul. And people go, oh, see, he cares about us. Nah, come on. He just knows that people love Ron Paul and that you'll like being told that he likes you too. But he, you know, the guy doesn't read. He doesn't know. He likes being tough. He likes being strong. And so whether it's Iran next or what, I don't know. But let's get real too, man. I had said this. I didn't know what the hell they're going to do in Venezuela, but there was a New York Times piece that said, well, they could invade, or they could do a drone strike, or they could do a special ops raid where they go in there and grab him. That was in the New York Times weeks ago. So we've been talking about that on all the shows. And I had said that, like, yes, of course, that is within the realm of possibility that they could go in there and grab him. If you think that the top tier special operations forces can't go in somewhere and grab someone, you're wrong. They can do that. Now, anywhere? I don't know about that. Beijing? Oh, probably not, right? Moscow? Don't try it, okay? You're going to have an H-bomb war. But Tehran? I think probably not snatch and grab, but how about an airstrike? Why didn't George Bush or Barack Obama or Trump before Joe Biden just kill the Ayatollah with a drone strike? For whatever reason, they didn't dare, or they just didn't have eyes on him. I think they didn't dare. But if Trump says to the Air Force and the CIA, listen, put eyes on the Ayatollah, be 99% sure, and then kill that son of a bitch. Why not? If you're Donald Trump and Rubio says you can, and it just worked there when you wanted to kidnap this one guy, and everybody's sick of the Ayatollah. That's what my friend Benjamin Netanyahu says. And what, like, you know what I mean? What all else is going on in his head to tell him not to do this? And quite frankly, what would Iran do if he did that? They're just going to launch everything they got in one big hissy fit, or it's going to be a fait accompli. They're going to elect a new guy. The Mullah, ruling council will elect a new supreme leader, and then probably he'll enter into negotiations, just like commie lady in Venezuela. I'm trying not to encourage him. I'm sorry. I'm basically like expressing on
don't give him any ideas, Scott.
how they probably conceive it and what they really might think they can get away with doing here.
Yeah, that's what scares me, is watching the reaction from the influencer class on the right. You know, the people that I watched with a laser sharp focus. And I was the guy, by the way. I know I'm nobody, but I was jumping up and down screaming, saying, you're electing a fucking commie. You're electing a strongman, pseudo-fascist, like absolutely zero principles, and you're not going to get a Ron Paul. You're not going to get limited government. You're going to get imperialism. You're going to get war. You're going to get inflation. You're going to get spending. Nobody believed me. All that whole influencer class was all behind him, and they seem to be still. I see the parroting today of people that were so cheering for, like, oh, no new wars, and they're like, oh, cool. Venezuela worked out great. We only killed 100 people, in and out, no big deal,
And
success.
it's totally over. No
Yeah,
more.
mission
We don't have to
accomplished,
worry
Scott.
about the future at all. We
Mission
know that for a fact.
accomplished.
Yep.
Yeah, these people are cheering it on. So that makes me upset too, because they're trying to drive the narrative. This is a successful operation, and then you see the administration already moving on to the next targets. Like, this is going to end badly. We all know that there's blowback. We always know that there's second order effects that you don't consider. There's unintended consequences. You look today, like there's a conflict. I'm not sure if you're paying attention, between United States and Russia right now. There's like a nuclear sub in the harbor in Caracas that's they're actually having conflicts, and they're boarding ships and like all sorts of crazy stuff. This could spiral in such a catastrophic way, and people are just cheering for this. Like, yeah, this is the greatest thing ever. Donald Trump, just a super competent, super smart individual, and all of our trust is in him. And I want to leave the planet. I might want to catch a ride on Elon's rockets to Mars, because this is crazy town here.
It's funny, is it reminds me of nothing more than Bill Kristol and oh God, what's that guy's name, man? I'm sorry, I can picture his stupid face. That used to write for the Weekly Standard about national greatness, the project of national greatness. You know what America needs? We need a big project that we can all do together, like invade Iraq, so that we can all kind of be one and do something big and hard and achieve it and identify ourselves as a people again. We need something cool for people to rally around, a strong America acting with strength and whatever. And then it works on the right, man. It just does. And I've been through this a lot of times before. In the Bill Clinton years, right-wingers pretended to hate the government. Oh, they hated the government until Bill Clinton cheated on his wife. And then they decided that all those issues, they don't care about anything at all anymore, other than this guy, Bill Clinton, is uncouth, that he committed a sin. What a bad guy. You know what we need? We need a good man like Ronald Reagan's son. Oh, sorry, George Bush's son. A good man like that. Why, I heard he's a Methodist. Wow. Render unto Caesar, everyone. Render unto Caesar, they all said, and got on their knees. And before a president, before Mr. President became the Pope of all American Protestant Christians. Oh, my minister promised it will cause the rapture and Jesus will come back if only we support the war in Iraq for Israel, they all believed and repeated. I bought a book at Walmart. Left Behind says, if you don't support the war, you're going to go to hell. And only the true war supporters will get raptured up to heaven. They all believed. Oh, and damn you, you pinko commie, femboy, homo, sellout, traitor, America hater. What do you mean you don't want to hit Saddam Hussein, who did the 9/11 attack? What do you mean you don't want to torture people when there's a ticking time bomb that could blow up a whole city? And just whatever. And it went on and on and on. They turned into the tiniest, patheticest little children in the world and stayed that way. It wasn't until halfway through Obama, when ISIS sacked Western Iraq, that the right wing went, jeez. Like, I remember trying hard for that. And then this is what, and then I guess, even, Trump, he should get more credit for this, although it was for selfish reasons. See, he was running against Jeb Bush. So he had to nuke Jeb Bush. And the way to nuke Jeb Bush was say Iraq was horrible and it was his brother's fault. And so he did that. But you might remember in the crowd in South Carolina, they were really shocked when he said that. And the one guy made him take it back. What do you mean they lied us into war? And he goes, well, maybe they just got it wrong. I don't know. And kind of back down a little bit. Like, that was right up against that. It was maybe at that South Carolina debate where the American right, like Tea Party Republican voter of America, came face to face, like hard up against the red brick wall of, actually, dummies, you were completely wrong the whole time. And now It's your favoriteest dear leader since W. Bush is telling you that. So now you have to choose. You agree with you this morning, or are you with Donald J. Trump against his enemies? And the American right sided with Trump, and he kicked everybody's ass in South Carolina. I think the next day was the vote, and he destroyed them, and including Jeb Bush may have actually been forced from the race after that day. And so then Trump, to his credit, then said a lot of great anti-war stuff. And that fed the narrative to the right wing that, like, yeah, no, we're anti-war now. We don't like them. It's like during Kosovo. Like, damn Bill Clinton. You know, he gets away with his impeachment thing and then he starts a war. What a scumbag, you know? And like, who wants to follow Barack Obama into battle? How's that guy going to be your leader? You know, that kind of thing. So they were, I guess they were coming off of that. And then Trump also is reinforcing that like, in a way, you know, Ron Paul is wonderful, but Ron Paul isn't mean. Ron Paul doesn't say, let me tell you about Jeb Bush, absolute horrible, evil, incompetent brother, all right? Because Ron Paul doesn't attack people. Ron Paul's a decent guy in a way, where Donald Trump's like, pull down Jeb's pants and push him down. You know what I mean? He's what he had to do to beat him. He had to completely punch him in the stomach, you know, figuratively speaking there. And make him the schoolyard bullied, you know, which is what he did. But so anyway, that had such a great effect on the right wing. And it did last kind of through Biden in the sense that when we got out of Afghanistan, everybody got really mad at Biden for how he got out of Afghanistan. They mostly did not get mad at him for actually getting out of Afghanistan. Those things kind of got conflated together, but mostly it was how he did it. Was people understood that, like, geez, this is pretty incompetent. It's kind of the perfect end to a completely ridiculous and horrible war. But whatever, it shouldn't have been that way. But then they were really good on Ukraine. You know, the Republican Party is horrible, but Republican voters, the Tea Party, the MAGA movement out in the country, they were good on Ukraine. They still are good on Ukraine. That's some harebrained, ridiculous, giant waste of money by these horrible Democrats, you know? But then, and you know, I shouldn't paint with too broad a brush because I think there are a lot of right wingers who are really mad at Trump for this stuff. You know, like,
do you think so?
The Iran war, yeah, you know, Twitter ain't everything. And even on Twitter, there are a lot of people who are like, man, I supported this guy, but I am pissed off now, you know, kind of thing, because they understand that, like, the war in Iran, the reason our government hadn't got us into a war with Iran this whole time is because that's a real situation, man. And you could really make it worse. And you could find yourself where now you have, quote unquote, no choice but to go much, much further on a full scale regime change to prevent this government from going forward with its nuclear program and this kind of thing. So that's why George Bush told Ehud Olmert no. And that's why Barack Obama told Benjamin Netanyahu no. And that's why Donald Trump told him no back in the first term. Like, there's got to be a better way to handle this. And things could get, you know, pretty screwed up there. So then when he did the so-called 12-day war last June and jumped in on Israel's side, people, including everyone, were all relieved that it ended that quickly. But remember, that was because the Iranians decided to stop fighting too. You know what I mean? And barely fought back and shot missiles in a symbolic manner at the empty corner of a base kind of thing again to help end the war. And there may have even been phone calls behind the scenes arranging that. We're going to bomb your thing and you can shoot back a couple of missiles, but our guys better not get hit by them, or, you know, that kind of thing, and ended that. Well, but the matter's not resolved. The nuclear program's still there, and Trump's ultimatum is still there. And Netanyahu says, well, now they got missiles, and so now they can't have missiles anymore. And Trump goes, now they're not allowed to kill any protesters. If any protesters die in the thing, then we're going to, you know, this. Lindsey Graham says he was assured by the president that he would kill the Ayatollah if any protesters died in the ongoing protests in the country right now, which there is quite a bit of unrest because of inflation and because of a severe freshwater crisis that they're having, drinking water crisis that they're having there. And so you have these massive protests. I don't know about foreign influence, but plenty of reason to assume that there's a lot of American and Israeli agents and assets running around there with a lot of money and who knows what. So I think people see the danger in that and are pretty mad about that. And I think the same thing here with Venezuela. You're right. There's a lot of people going, well, in and out, it was so easy and fun and whatever. There's a lot of people saying, yeah, but now what? Trump says he's taking over the country. He's taking responsibility for the transition of how everything is going to go now. These are very bushy in terms here.
Did you see Stephen Miller's the guy now? Stephen Miller's running Venezuela.
He's going to be the viceroy.
What could go wrong?
It's pretty amazing. Justin Logan, again, from Cato, great guy, has a thing at the American Conservative now where he says, wow, so this is going to be the centerpiece of the next 3 years of your presidency? This is what we're doing. Like, a lot of ways this thing can go wrong. A lot of ways. And look, I'm hoping for the best. I don't need this stuff. I don't want job security. Antiwar.com barely pays me anything anyway, dude. I would probably prefer to just go get a landscaping job at this point and make people's gardens look nice. But this, I would prefer that everything work out fine. I mean, after all, these commies are terrible. They've been terrible in power. Chavez before was also a basket case and helped destroy that country. So there's a potential for things to get better for them now. You know what I mean? But again, that's not America's goal to make the place better. Not really.
Definitely not.
I even saw a thing where they said, we can't send the Venezuelan immigrants in the country now. They all get asylum because we can't send them home to an uncertain situation. I thought you guys just saved the day. Now we get more Venezuelan immigrants as a result of this already, like on the third day.
Yep. This rug pull has been epic. I've never seen such a massive rug pull by any president in history. It's been quite wild to see. Here's my question to you: how much of this do you think is tied to Epstein?
I don't know.
Is that too conspiratorial? I don't like to be overly conspiratorial. It makes me a bad libertarian, I know. But
I mean, there's more documents coming. This isn't going to stop that. It takes attention off of it. But there's always a lot of things going on in the world. You know what I mean? When they released the documents about Russiagate last, early summer, they released a bunch of stuff. People said, oh, you're distracting from Epstein. Like, actually, they ran on this, and clearly Tulsi Gabbard had the mandate from the president to go digging and see what you can find and then put it out there for the people. And they were all working on it for months, and they put it out. So, meanwhile, Jeffrey Epstein is always in the news. So everything's a distraction from Jeffrey Epstein, including a peanut butter sandwich, right? Like, it's everything in the world. So if you want to do it that way, and see it through those eyes, you always can. On the other hand, you might very well be right at least some of the time. They're like, you know what? We actually have some really bad documents coming. We're going to release them late Friday night, and we're going to start a big thing on Saturday. That very well could be a thing. You know what I mean? I'm not discounting.
Well, I don't think it's going to be the release, Scott. I think what it's going to be is I'm not releasing it. I think he's going to give us the fuck you that he's given us about Greenland and everything else. Like, I'm just going to do it. Yeah, I'm not going to, I'll redact everything if I want to. You can all go fuck yourselves. I'm the president. He's already got that precedent set that if I'm acting in my legal capacity as president, I can't be prosecuted. So do what you want. I'm not going to give you anything. And I'll start a war to, distract from it. Like, I don't put that past him.
I mean, not like they probably would do it, but I think it comes down to it. Congress can order the marshals to do things outside of his control. So, I don't know, like arrest the attorney general who's in violation of the law, right? They released 500 pages of what they've released so far is blacked out. And now they say they found another 1 million pages in New York, which, look, somebody said, hey, we have to admit we found this. Somebody, right, like whoever's job it was, went and found a file cabinet and went, uh-oh.
Well, that's kind of dumb too. This
here,
this is what shocks me is like, I know a
they
little
could have
bit.
just burned all that, right? They didn't have to admit. Nobody knew they had 1 million files. They admitted they had 1 million files. So
they knew they had 1 million files, Scott. The way it works, when you have evidence that's taken in, it's scanned in. It goes into their system, and there is a check. There's like a check after it gets sent in. They know what materials they have that were related to the Epstein case. I don't believe for a second these people are like, oh, we just found 1 million documents.
It depends
LOL.
on which people. I mean, in this case, they said it was New York that found some. So in other words, you know, whatever. You have different FBI offices doing different searches through different systems. So, look, again, they could have just burned them and said, actually, what we have is 1,000 files. Here you go. Or whatever the number is. But they admitted they have 1 million more. Well, now they're going to have to come up with 1 million more. You know what I mean?
I honestly think he's just going to redact the shit out of them and say, what are you going to do?
People didn't know. Nobody else knew except whoever inside the government knew. And then, like, I guess whatever. I'm speculating, but like somebody felt they had to publicly admit that they found these. Someone who knew that they existed didn't think for a minute that they were going to get away with dumping them in the ocean or dumping them in an incinerator. And they weren't going to be the one to get in trouble for obstructing the thing. And so somebody told that we have 1 million here, right? Like conceivably they could have kept that secret. But I think someone was afraid of keeping that secret, that there's a law that says you have to turn this stuff over now or you could get prosecuted, which is, you know, you and I kind of roll our eyes like, when did a government agent ever get prosecuted? It doesn't really happen, but they can still be afraid of that. You know what I mean? That has in the past happened, you know? So I'm a little bit optimistic about that, man, because I think there's just too many people who are too obsessed with it. It just ain't going away. Donald Trump has tried so hard to make it go, oh, Epstein, come on, that's totally fake, just like Russiagate. And it's like, no, it's not just like Russiagate, dude. It's just not. Russiagate, why, that was a bunch of crap. This is not. There's something here. And I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I can x-ray through those redactions, but I want to know. And there's just too many people who are not going to let this thing go. And after all, look, Trump would have vetoed it if he thought he could have. They would have overrode his veto. Thomas Massey got this thing through, you know, or at least he was really risking that. And he was looking absolutely horrible. He kept trying to stop it and trying to stop it. Somebody, Stephen Miller or somebody told him, hey, man, you got to like get at the head of this parade because you're not going to be able to hold it back. You know, so
yeah, and I think this is what they were doing when the government was shut down. Remember, there was that whole long, protracted government shutdown before this all got brought.
They were trying to prevent the vote on that bill. Yeah,
they were, and I think they were also taking that time to strategize. And I think they had a strategy when they reopened the government. It's like, oh, we're going to do this. We'll drag it out as long as we can. When the issue gets forced, we'll sign the bill. We'll push it through. And then I think now they're doing the slow walk. We're going to redact the shit out of everything. We're going to fight to the bitter end, try to get squeak by to the midterms, and then hope for the best. But I don't think anyone's having it, man. There's too many people that are, deeply intrigued by the story. There's such a salacious element to it, but it goes a lot further than just the sex crimes. You know, if you read Whitney Webb's work, all the links to organized crime and geopolitics and the intelligence communities, like this reads like a really intriguing novel, and people are disgusted by it and they're intrigued by it. They're fascinated, and the fact that Donald Trump keeps trying to wave it away. And it's like, oh, I can just make this go away with my, cult of personality, and hardly anybody's having it. I think this is going to be his undoing. My question is when it's going to all explode, and what he's going to do. What links will he go to make sure that the truth in those files doesn't get released? I still don't know what the answer to that is.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing he has going for him now is just how absolutely despicable and horrible the Democrats are. I think there's a huge portion of his coalition that's going to stay home in the midterms. A lot of people who voted for him never were Republicans in the first place. Now they're going to show up and vote Republican in a midterm election after he's been nothing but Israel instead this whole time, breaking all his promises. You mentioned about how you were warning people about inflation and how, he's the furthest thing from Ron Paul when it comes to money. Here's the guy who demands easy money at all times, willing to have a huge political war with the Federal Reserve, which most presidents wouldn't do. They try to keep up the appearances of the so-called independence
of the Fed. Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, you better lower those interest rates or else, and doing his own regime change or attempted regime change over there to make sure to keep interest rates low and even lower, because he's terrified of the consequences of the bust coming. But then all that means is funneling money into housing, which is already artificially expensive from the last huge round of inflation during COVID and all that. And the prices have come down a bit, but they have not come down nearly to where they were before. And then you also have all of the massive restrictions on supply. And, it's funny because You can even read in the Wall Street Journal and stuff where like they understand that this is destroying the country and it's making young people absolutely, distraught, and it's preventing them from creating families and reproducing because they just cannot buy a home. And people that's how they have their priorities. First, you get enough money that you can buy a house. Then you ask a lady to marry you. Then you move in and have babies together. Whatever, you know what I mean? And they're not going to break that. So if they're still living with roommates, then they're not having kids. And so they know that they're totally disrupting the society with this. But guess what? The baby boomers are a huge generation and they vote and they're not dead yet. And as Trump put it, somebody asked him about this and he explained it in perfectly, certain terms, which this is all government's fault in the first place. But he says there's a huge generation of people out there who the value of their home, their entire savings and their net worth is all in the value of their home. And he's not even saying raise interest rates and let there be a crash. Forget that. He's saying if we even change zoning to allow an increase in supply of housing, that could cause the prices of houses to go down. And for the people who already own one, especially the baby boomers, they could be really hurt by that, which is of course true. But that means though that, well, if you're young, screw you. Because the government is here, not the free market. The government is here and they're calling the shots and they're picking winners and losers and you're the loser. Why? You're young. You don't vote. But your parents do. And your parents are at war with you. So welcome to America. That's how it goes. And so instead of having a free market in housing where it's worth what it's worth, instead it's a completely rigged game. It's like Lockheed selling to the military or something. It's completely rigged.
It is, but the gig is up, man. I don't know if you paid attention to bond yields, but like we're seeing this divergence. Even though the interest rates are coming down, the Fed funds rate, you're seeing people. There's no appetite for our bonds because everyone knows we're full of shit. Like we're going to repay our debt with money that's worth a hell of a lot less than when it's lent out. And so, and we're obviously pissing off China. They're divesting themselves of the dollar. All those inflated dollars are coming back. God, one of the things that's really shocking to me is, are you aware of how much of the national debt, the percentage of what we've accumulated since 1776 is under Trump? It's 22%, almost a quarter.
In just this term?
No, total. So he's served almost 5 years now, and so in 5 years he's accumulated about a quarter of all of the debt we've ever accumulated as a country. And the
CARES Act, man. That CARES Act and all this military spending, $1 trillion a year, 1.7 really if you count the nukes and the VA and all the rest, 1.7 trillion a year according to Winslow Wheeler.
Well, so far, hold on. Did you see the story that just broke today, like an hour or two ago, where Donald Trump is now demanding that the military budget go from 1 trillion to 1.5 trillion next year?
Yeah, when it's already really 1.7, so it'll be
exactly. So now you're like 2 point whatever. Yeah. So
crazy, man.
It's not going to stop. This guy is not a conservative by any stretch of the imagination. I have no idea how he gets labeled as right wing. I've always called Donald Trump authoritarian leftist. I can't see anything in him that
kind of left liberal. He's a Bill Clinton type, really. On almost everything.
But hyper authoritarian though. He's like
that counts. Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he.
Unless I'm missing something like that is very right wing about him, but I can't see anything.
It's the immigration thing, right? That's what makes him a right winger. And then, he's never been a small government guy, but there's something right wing about hard nationalism and imperialist interventionism. Give me that oil and all that kind of crap. You know what I mean? Like that's
fair.
That kind of nationalism it's part and parcel of liberalism too. But it's also part of being sort of to the right of the conservatives, even. Well, hell, the conservatives are as belligerent as anyone. But it's the entire American right, other than the libertarians and the paleos. And what is it with the paleos? Well, they all have an IQ of 160 or something, right? Like Scott McConnell and Pat Buchanan and Jude Wanniski. These guys, why are they that right wing but also anti-war? Well, they're brilliant geniuses who know everything. Kind of gives them an advantage. You know what I mean? Whereas most people, right wingers, dude, they like to fight. You know, what are you, wimp? There's a bad guy, you're supposed to do tough guy stuff to him, and just that kind of thinking is all it takes. You know, I got in so much trouble when that scum Toby Keith died, and I said, Toby Keith recruited thousands of young men into the U.S. Army, lying to them in his songs that Iraq did 9/11 and that they should go join the army to go and fight. And people got so mad. Oh, yeah, right. Like Toby Keith influenced anyone to join the army. Toby Keith influenced tens of thousands of people to join the army. And you can see them in the replies on that thread. I joined the army because of Toby Keith. There I was driving down the road, listening to the radio in my pickup truck. And he got me in my heartstrings and my patrioticness. And I decided I had to go defend my country from Iraq because of this stupid son of a bitch. Now, were they convinced by like actual knowledge or something? No. They're driving, they're listening to a song, and they get that feeling. Like
Lee
this
Greenwood
is the right
feeling.
thing to do. This is what makes you a hero. That was the word of the decade. Hero. You're a specialist in the infantry. Hero. You pack cardboard boxes or turn a wrench on Apache helicopter tires. Hero. And Iraq did this to us. Again, back to the whole thing where I was mocking before about for the people who bought it. How could you be such a commie that you don't buy it with them? How could you hate America so much that you don't want to stop Saddam Hussein? Spit, you know? Like they hated us because they were so damned stupid and we knew so much better than them. But they couldn't get it through their head, dude. They couldn't. We can't cut and run now. Then the terrorists will have won. Oh, man. Whoa, I get it. You saw not even Charles Krauthammer, right? You saw like some no-name, nobody, brand X Republican consultant spout that crap on Fox News. And now that's your point of view, huh? Can't leave now. We can't cut and run now. For years it was like that. And I shouldn't just be doing a redneck accent. It ain't like that. It's coast to coast, north and south. But the American right and a lot of center-left liberals too, man, they love believing in that stuff, you know? And
I get it. That got me, Scott. Like, I don't know if you know, but I was in the military. I left high school and I went straight in the military, and I was taught the same bullshit. I had family members that were in World War II and in Vietnam, and it was the honorable thing. And I see thank you for your service and all this veneration of the troops. And I got suckered in, man. I did 5 years in the army, and I thought I was going in with the best intentions. I was doing my patriotic duty. What's that?
They send you to Iraq?
Oh, I'm way too old for that, Scott. No,
Okay.
I graduated high school in 92, so I'm like super old.
Really? God
Yeah.
dang, you look really young.
People keep telling me that. I think
I
my beard
thought you were
hasn't gone
younger than me.
gray yet.
You're about 3 years older than me.
I'm
Okay.
50. I'm 5.
Oh, no, okay. No, you're my same age.
So yeah, but anyway, I got suckered in by
Cool.
that, man. And I did like that you're talking about that. I would have been influenced by the Toby Keith or the Lee Greenwood, proud to be American and all that stuff. And it's infective and it's really diabolical. And I get a lot of hate for it. I have a couple of TikTok clips where I talk about, like I don't think that my service was noble or it's very evil, and it's something that I'm deeply ashamed of. And people are like, "What the hell's wrong with you?"
Defending your people would be noble, but this ain't that. So
no.
there's your answer, you know?
Yeah, for sure. But, I think the best way to cure yourself or disabuse yourself of that patriotic feeling is to join the military. Once you see what it's like from the inside, how gross that machine is, it's like it's pretty quick to sort of like cure some people of that.
I mean, they probably would have thrown me right out anyway, but when I got out of high school, I was already a New World Order kook. So there's no way in the world I was going to go serve Bill Clinton and wear a UN flag on my shirt and all that crap. There's no way in the world. So
and when I went, I was like a Ronald Reagan, old school Republican. I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh and shit in high school. Like I'm embarrassed when I think about the late teens, early 20s version of myself. That's pretty cringe.
Yeah. Well, things change, man.
No, Ron Paul helped me out. I got to give him a ton of credit. I was
Me
onto
too.
him fairly early, and he's boy, he's getting towards the end of his career, and I think he's somebody that I was happy to see during this election here to get the airtime that he got. There was a lot of people that supported Trump, partly because he was he and Elon both were calling out Ron Paul and sort of giving him some lip service. It was good to see that opinion change, because I remember in 08 and 2012 and whatever, like, people hated him. He was the guy to get the right wing to boo the golden rule.
He literally did. For people don't believe that, you can Google it. That when they booed Ron Paul, it was when he quoted Jesus Christ saying, man, you should consider the advice of our Lord and Savior that you should treat other people the way you would want to be treated. And they went, boo! Get that commie out of here. It's so funny. Oh my goodness. What a world.
So I remember Ron Paul getting the treatment, man. They treated him like shit. And so now to see him, and it was a bigger embrace. It used to be this little group of weirdo libertarians that supported Ron Paul, and I think now it's like he's got wide support, and I think he's going to go down as one of the greats for sure.
Yep. And hey, look, man, we got 30 years worth of his writings at antiwar.com/Paul. You can go see how good he was on Kosovo and all that stuff going way back and all the way through. And, Ron's really been great on stuff. It's not just he takes the right position, but he really, even compared to any of the other anti-war congressmen, he always knew more about it, always, had a better take. And, of course, he still does his show with Dan McAdams, The Liberty Report, and with Chris Rossini. They do a great job, all week long over there. They do foreign policy, almost exclusively foreign policy, on Dan and Ron's show Monday through Thursday, and then they do economics on Fridays with Chris Rossini. And Ron is still great. I saw him, the last time I saw him in person was like 2 years ago. I went to his birthday, but I didn't get to see him at his birthday. But I went and I saw him maybe a year before that, or maybe 2 years, I think like a year before that, down there in Houston for some event. And he hadn't aged a bit in a while, man. He seems just the same to me. I just saw some brand new YouTubes of him. He's still real sharp, doing good.
Yeah,
so.
He's super sharp, and I love to see him still contributing. He's, like I said, I see him and McAdams posting their stuff, and he's just laser sharp as usual. I am a little bit annoyed. I got to call it Elon a little bit, because it seemed like leading up to the election, he was doing all the right things. He was quoting Ron Paul, retweeting stuff. He was retweeting, Rothbard stuff. Like, he seemed like he was this on the libertarian train, and I think
he's a government contractor.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like the mask is off, though, recent days, though. He's back in, the camp with Trump, and even though he called him out for basically being a pedo and being in the Epstein files, and, that just kind of went away. Like, he tweeted that thing, and then he took it down, and now they've reconciled, and now he's basically posting pro Venezuelan intervention material, and then completely being a regime cheerleader again, pro-Israel, pro-war, pro-everything. It's just like, God. That's a shame.
Yeah. Well, like I say about the Panama thing, if things go relatively smoothly from here, that's the best case scenario, right? That we could hope for there. But then that could lead to their inspiration that they can just keep on and on doing these kinds of things in more and more places. And maybe keep going until they come up against a red brick wall, you know what I mean? And really hit hard. So I don't know, man. I can tell you the first interview I did when I started the interview show in 2003 was with Alan Bach from antiwar.com and the Orange County Register. And then this quote, I think, comes from Aldous Huxley that he was quoting. But it's an Alan Bach quote to me. And it was that violent and destructive ends, at least usually determine violent and destructive means determine violent and destructive ends. So you want to the ends justify the means. You're going to end up ruining your own end if you have to use immoral means to achieve them. because you're almost always going to cause worse problems and things that you weren't planning to happen and that kind of thing. Call it blowback. So, you know, when there was a coup in Honduras in 2009, Obama originally denounced it, and then Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State, overruled him and said, in fact, we stand by the coup plotters here. Shut up, Barack. And so he did. And America stood behind the new government there. And they were the ones who, and they were overthrowing a left-leaning government or a right-leaning one. And then this guy got right into bed with all of the drug cartels, and crime soared. And this is where the huge Honduran refugee crisis of the Obama years came from. And there's even the famous quote of Hillary Clinton being asked, well, what do we do with all these Honduran children turning up at the border? And she's like, turn them away, turn them away. Like, she's the one who ruined their country. You know, it led to, now that wasn't a big deal in American media, because you think anybody in American media knew or cared that America had been behind that, or at least had helped, when the entire Organization of American States denounced it and demanded that it be reversed and all that. And then America came and put their thumb on the scale and said, no, we want this. That the American people didn't know that. And they didn't know that. Yeah. And then that was what caused the country to devolve into this crime crisis. And that was what caused people to send their unaccompanied children north to the United States to try to get through this loophole and get into America. And that was how desperate they were, that they were sending their kids with strangers up there, you know, because they wouldn't be let in. Their kids would. So, and then Hillary's like, whatever, dude. I'll tell you what you do. Let them eat cake. That's what we'll do with them, you know. So that I worry that, like, even best case scenario, there's going to be unintended horrible consequences of this unfold. And, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, and
I don't like predicting things, but I fear for the worst, I guess is the better way to say it.
I do too, and I think the quicker something blows up, the better, right? Because I think that if they can, you know, if they are allowed to take 4 or 5 or 6 chef's moves forward with all of these multiple interventions, I think you're going to see the unintended consequences multiply. And I think the disaster will become scaled up a lot larger than if Venezuela blows up in the public sentiment that, especially particularly among Trump's influencer class, or the base that's left on the right. If they can turn against him, maybe we'll have some more breaks, some more friction to stop. But I fear that they've already got the next 3-4 moves planned out, and this thing's going to turn into a gigantic geopolitical shit show.
Hope not. I don't know, man. It ain't a question whether they can really get their plans that well together, but whether they believe that they got them well together enough. You know what I mean? And that, I don't know.
It scares me that he surrounds himself with yes men. I think that he's somebody that will not tolerate a lot of dissent.
Yeah.
And
Marx too. I mean, Marco Rubio, he ain't just a yes man. He's you know what we should do, Mr. President, man. And he's full of very bad ideas.
Yeah, but if you have somebody saying that, it would behoove you to have some rational, sane people who might be thinking through the potential consequences. Say, sir, if we do this, this might be a negative consequence. And of course, maybe he doesn't even care. I just don't know. I can't figure the guy out. It feels like he's knowing that he's towards the end of the road. You hear him talking a lot about dying. I'm not sure if you pay attention to this, but he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna die, and I'm not gonna go to heaven. I'm a bad guy," and he's like telling on himself. And I think that he's concerned with like affixing some sort of major legacy to himself. That's why I think he's taking these big swings. I'll be the president that, number one, builds that weird fucking Arc de Trump, he's calling it, in Washington, D.C., some giant monument to himself. I want to have a ballroom that's in my name. I want to buy Greenland or take over Greenland. I think he's looking for some sort of legacy to pin to himself that's not going to be Epstein.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's right. God help us all.
Yep. Well, I have a question for you.
I don't even really believe in God.
I've got we're getting towards the end here, but I've got this autistic pattern recognition thing. Are you noticing everyone using the word hemisphere now in the geopolitical space? First time I saw it was Mike Lee.
Excuse for intervention here. Yeah, is all it is. Pretending that the Monroe Doctrine says we can invade any South American country we want. That's not what it says. But whatever. They're just writing themselves a check. It's just weapons of mass destruction. Just a word and they, use as a hollow excuse. Its ability to protect. Whatever.
Okay, well, last question, man. Tell me what's positive in our space. Do we have some anti-war left that are joining the cause, or do we have any developments that you see as overly positive? I want to try to end on a high note, man. What do you see that's positive in the anti-war space?
I felt a lot better about it a few weeks ago. I agree with you. The reaction here has been pretty bad. But overall I'm positive. Overall, I think we're winning the argument, and overall I think people are going to regret this, or at least they're going to look at it at the very least like, well, we got really lucky that time that it didn't turn into an Iraq or a Vietnam or something like that. That's best case scenario. But I think overall, Monroe Doctrine, nothing. People don't want this. Like, what do you mean even the way Trump says it, we have to run the country to make sure that it's run well and this and that. We're like, people are looking outside and they're going, our country is not run well. And we actually don't even know where Venezuela is other than down south there somewhere, and certainly not our damn business. You read the U.S. Constitution. It says that this national government should be the national government of these states in the union. They go, it says in there, if you try to elect a commie, the national government has the right to guarantee a Republican form of government to your state. You will have a bicameral legislature and an independent judiciary, or the national government will do a regime change and make sure. That's for the states in the union. That's not for every country in the world. And there's nothing in there. There's no amendment to the Constitution that says, oh, and if any business has an investment and they lose out in some other country, then the poor people of America shall be forced to pay to bail out any particular company and their interest. United Fruit Company stands to lose profit. So we, in the name of, I don't know, Vladimir Lenin or something, we are going to collectively tax and force the commie subject population of America to subsidize war even on behalf of United Fruit and kill anyone who stands in between them and their bananas at the prices that they're willing to pay for them. That's completely crazy, insane, psychopathic, murderous, and immoral and wrong. And everybody knows that. All these people pretending to be Christians, talking about perfectly murder people and steal from them. Give me a break, dude. Everybody knows. As Bill Hicks used to say way back in history, you all, in your hearts, you already know the arguments. You already know what's right. I can sit here and convince you like you really think it's okay to murder people and steal things from them. Shut up. You do not. You know what I mean? Give me a break.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think, I don't know. September 11th was a hell of a thing, man. It just shocked the hell out of everyone. We don't have one of those right now to get people that stupid. You know what I mean? I just can't see it lasting. And then more and more, you got Mark Levin up there. You got Ben Shapiro saying this is a great day for America. Well, if it's a great day for America to Ben Shapiro, then actually it's probably not, according to any thinking man who actually is not a Likud spy, wrecker, fifth columnist inside this country. Don't we all hate Ben Shapiro? Don't we all believe the opposite of Ben Shapiro? It's a good place to start. Good rule of thumb. What that guy said? No, I'm on the other side of most of that.
Yeah, you could pick some certain people. You got a Lindsey Graham, you have a Ben Shapiro, a Mark Levin. You could just look at their reaction and basically do the opposite. It's like like the anti-Kramer ETF. I don't know if you've seen that before. That whatever Jim Cramer advocates for an investment, you just do the opposite and you just make a ton of money that way. I think that's a good rule of thumb for geopolitics.
Yep. All right, man. I'm gonna go eat chicken.
Yes, sir, man. Hey, tell everybody where they can find you online. I know they already know, but give you a chance to plug your book and everything else.
Sure. I'll tell you what, there's all my books behind me: Fool's Errand, Provoked, Enough Already, and Hotter Than the Sun, and The Great Ron Paul. You can just go to my Twitter, is at Scott Horton Show. And then I have all my links in my bio there to all my shows and my books and my academy and my institute and antiwar.com and all the stuff you need there.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for pulling up with me, man. It's been a delightful conversation. I really appreciate everything you've done for the movement and anti-war in general, and keep doing what you're doing. You're a great voice and one of the people that I recommend most to follow if you're interested in geopolitics. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, Scott.